Hi guys, welcome back. I've returned. So sorry about that. My computer literally just crashed on me. Um, I should have seen that one coming. Let's just not waste any time. Let's get straight into this. So where were we? So when you make your empty project, go to your Solution Explorer. Sorry, I jumped the gun for saying Server Explorer, but go to your Solution Explorer. Go to Add. Go to Add New Item. Now, what you want to do under your data tab, you want to go to service-based database. Okay, give it an appropriate name. We could just call it. We can leave it as database one, just for the sake of time. I really don't want to waste time right now. Most of my live streams have been like an hour plus. I really want to make this one like 30 minutes. Yeah, I think I had two instances of Visual Studio, my internet browser with a couple tabs, OBS running live streaming to YouTube. My computer just wasn't having it. It's not the most decked out computer, so just gonna wait for this to load. That's the database just being generated there. So I'm just gonna quickly generate my notes as well. I had that one. Let me see if I can find it. Ba-da-ba-ba-da. Should be here somewhere. Is it this one? I think it's this one. Yeah, I think this was the notes. So sorry about this, guys. So let's just pick up where we left off. So we've done this. Got a little check mark there. I'll just kind of readjust the screen so we can see the notes at the same time. And then we'll swiftly get back to this. Let me know, guys, if you want a copy of the source code, if you need any help with this kind of stuff. I can make it available on a bit repository, if it will be of any help to you guys. So we've gone ahead and we've created an empty project type. We've added a database file to the project. Now we have to open the Server Explorer and add a new table. So again, this is making the database itself. So if I'm not mistaken, if I go to the Server Explorer and add a new table, which I hope I haven't forgotten how to do. Let me just make sure I'm doing this right. Let's see if I'm doing this right. I don't really trust my notes. Just waiting for my computer to catch up right now. Yes, so what you want to do, sorry about that, guys. So yeah, double click your database file. It should come up as database, your database.ndf, so it's an NDF file. And once you double click it, it should come up on your Server Explorer, which is what I should have written down on my notes, so I don't get so confused. And what we want to do, we want to create a table, right? If I expand, there's nothing there. So I'm going to just click it, and right click tables, wait for the visual to just keep up with me. And I'm going to add a new table. Quickly check my dashboard, make sure everything's okay. Yeah, I am still live, that's good. Now we're literally gonna just scratch the surface here. What the intention of this workshop is just to bring to your attention and show you how to do the most basic of SQL/C# data access. So we're not going to go through it's not a comprehensive walkthrough. It's a very basic fundamental primer. The reason I'm saying this, do excuse me, is because we're going to enter some table entries ourselves, and then the only operation we're going to really perform, as I actually already performed at the beginning of the first part of the stream before it cut out, excuse me, was basically returning the data in the table, which happened to be, I'll show you after this little demonstration, I'll go back to that demonstration so I can actually show you the table itself, so you see where the name Carl actually came from. If you recall, if you saw the first part, Carl came on the message box, the name Carl, because I put that as an entry, as a record. So once we're here, now another disclaimer: I am not a profession. Should I say, yeah, I'm not professional at SQL. I'm learning. I'm still learning the language. I come from a C# background, but I'm still learning SQL. So if there's better ways to do things, with the way I approach this, there's probably is. I know there is. Don't be too scandalized because this is a very gentle intro. So I think enough of that. You want to put your column, sorry, your ID column would basically be your primary key. You want to make something unique, something that will, for example, if you have, in this case of my other example, I was using this idea of like a game scenario. So if you have, say, like individual players, each player might have like a unique ID that's like internal to the program, so you can quickly identify which player is which. You want to make that kind of data probably your primary key in the context of that scenario, but it really depends on your application. So, for example, this is actually quite hard to read, so I'm just going to expand it a little bit. I'm going to rename the table because I don't really like just the name table. We're going to just say user names. Let's make this really simple. I'm sorry, guys. Do excuse me. And let's go ahead and say, I don't know, username. So we're just going to basically just fill out our table. I'm going to make some columns here. I find nchar10, you can't really store that many characters, but it should do the job for us. Let's just say, for example, password. Just like a simple form, right? Username, password, we've got ID, I don't know, we could just say email, something made up. And these can just stick as nchars10 for now. Maybe, actually, I might change it to nvarchar50, just so we can have a little bit more leeway with how many characters we want to input. So, nvarchar, and I'll leave ideas in because it only makes sense. And what we want to do here as well with the integer value, if you click it, go to your properties panel. What I would suggest is that you hit this, I think it's identity specification, and then set it to true, is identity, that is. Then identity increment, I will leave it to auto increment by 1. That way, when you add new entries into the rows, then it will just basically increment your ID. In this case, it's called ID, your foreign key column, without you having to worry about it. It's got a notification there. Okay, and we're going to keep it extremely simple. I'm just having a look around here. Once you're happy with the database, again, if you're going through this for the first time, you want to keep it fairly simple, and then you can just kind of go through things as and when. You can go ahead and just update your database. So you'll be prompted with this window, this little wizard. That mock is really nice. I'm going to go ahead and hit update database. Hopefully I don't have anything just about correcting for this very simplistic example. And as it says here, update completed successfully. I'm just going to collapse that though. So let's see where we are so we can follow our milestones. We can kind of follow the agenda. Open this Explorer, which we kind of did. Add the table, we've done that. Use the designer to add columns, we've kind of done that now. And we have updated the database. Excuse me. So now comes kind of the interesting stuff. We're going to be kind of focusing to the data access stuff. So how to access the data that is in our database. We don't really have any information stored in the database as of right now. If I go ahead and expand this, and I update the Explorer by hitting the refresh button, you see here that we have under the tables folder usernames. I'm just going to go ahead and click that. See if I did that right. Oops, sorry about that, guys. And we can see we have ID, username, password, and email on the directory, on the, yeah, kind of the directory here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click. I've right clicked username, the table. I'm going to go ahead and hit here, show table data. Gonna just wait for that to load. Hope that's the right option. Yeah, and we have here our data view, I could even say, and here's where you can add record entries to basically populate your table, your database, which could have multiple tables, but in this case, it's gonna just have one, right? So let's make this very, very simple. Let's just say 1 for ID. Let me just make sure that's right. Really sorry, guys. Let's say, for example, for the name, I don't know. I was gonna say Susan, but I don't know. Yeah, why not Susan? That's been automatically given the ID of 1. We're gonna make up a password. Let's just say password. Obviously, this is not what would be in a production-ready application. It's just a proof of concept. Email su@email.com 123. Just made up, and we have our entry. I'm gonna go ahead and hit save, and that's been done there. And I just want to double check to make sure there's not an update there as well. So that's not that. That's not that. Let's refresh. Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and collapse this, and now we're gonna kind of move on to the data access layer. We've basically covered creating the database itself. In this very simplistic example, all resides in the same solution, but that's the whole idea, just to get you guys kind of used to it for those who haven't really explored this side of things. So what I'm going to do for the data access, I'm going to go to my prepared solution, because all the members are there and it will save a ton of time instead of writing all the code out again. So I'm going to just close this. Awesome. And I'm going to go to my data access solution file. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to run you through the code and kind of try and at a high level explain what's going on. And then, of course, if you need to kind of use the code yourself, or you want to learn it, excuse me, you can kind of follow the namespaces I'm using. They're all documented on the MSDN. You can kind of explore what they do, what you can do, and stuff like that, right? Bad cough today. Right, sweetness, I think I'm in. So I'm going to collapse this player UI demo. That's going to be the next part. That's the user interface layer. What I'm going to do here is basically what you want to do is in your empty file, your empty project, you want to right click and you want to add a new class. Okay, I've already done that. I'm really sorry about coughing. The thing is with this, I was trying to go for this approach of using interfaces. And again, I'm only really scratching the surface here of just like how you can approach this. Because essentially, when you consider the fact that, I guess you could consider the fact that you're sort of writing an API and making a data access level layer that allows you to access the SQL database layer from, say, like a Windows form user interface, and some kind of intermediary layer could be considered an API of sorts. And so I thought it might be fun to kind of implement this as an interface. So what I have here, of course, this is quite rough, but it's just going to kind of paint the picture. I went ahead, instead of creating a class, what you could do first is create an interface. I called it iCrud, because remember, when we're dealing with interfaces, we need to prefix the name of our class with the I, a capital I, to kind of denote that this is an interface. And then you need to basically create some functionality, the underlying functionality itself, The interface doesn't hold members that, should I say, kind of outline the implementation itself. As any definition will tell you, an interface is kind of like a contract in that you provide the member that you want to access. You gotta make sure its respective signature is the same, and then basically you have access as long as your if you ask me, and I think documentation at MSDN basically says, so I'm reiterating what the documentation says. You want this naming convention to be the same as the data that you are basically trying to derive from. So what does that mean? As I have here iCrud, you basically want to have CRUD as your class with your implementation logic. So I'm going to double click that. So you can go ahead, right click your project, add new class, and according to what you're naming yours, you will name it. It may not be CRUD as I have done here. And so, yeah, I'll just kind of go from top to bottom here just to kind of show what's going on. You want to make sure you have these important namespaces. It's necessary for the SQL data access, which is system.configuration, system data, and system data's SQL client. Do make sure if you go to projects, add a reference. Make sure, yeah, go to assemblies. Do make sure you are adding any namespaces you need. So, for example, what is it? System configuration may be unchecked. Make sure you've checked that so you can actually access the members you need. In this case, because I want to reference this class from the interface, I've added here on the class, the top of the class, should I say declaration, I guess, colon iCrud. And then, yeah, then you want to have some fun pulling your implementation. Now, this is a kind of quick proof of concept in the sense that it really depends on what your application will need. But I will show you the main functionality that you need to be aware of. So basically, let's say, for example, we're dealing with retrieving information that we've stored in our database, like something as simple as a username, right? It might be a good idea to have a variable here in global scope that will basically, what I've done. Oh yeah, firstly, sorry about that. You want to basically have the name of all your, I feel like I'm saying this right, rows. I always get the rows and the columns mixed up, but do bear with me if I get it wrong. I just follow what my notes say so I don't kind of hesitate too much. You want to get your row name stored somewhere because we're going to need this with our syntax for actually accessing those particular, I think it's those particular fields, if I can say, in the within the database. So I have here, oh yeah, I might as well actually show you the database itself. Let me just get it up there. Oops. Just so we can know what we're looking at. Just arbitrary strings. So I have here my player profile table. I'm gonna go ahead and view data. So show table data. Just gonna wait for that. And I think it's already here, but it doesn't matter. It will hop to my data tab. I'll just click it myself there. Oh goodness, what happened here? I think what has I'm not too sure actually. An error occurred in miscellaneous file. I attempted to open data. Let me just close that. Not 100% sure. Let me update this and see what happens. In any case, you should be able to access your table that you created. But let me just make sure I didn't skip a step. Okay, not quite. So over here, I have, in my case, I have these columns: player ID, player username, player email. It's premium tier. That's just an excuse for me to put a boolean there. And player password, right? And so in this case, I have player ID is 12, player username is Carl Smith at email.com, true for the premium tier and player, and the password is password Carl. It's a very simple placeholder information. So if you do remember, excuse me, at the beginning of the demonstration in the first part of the video of the stream, we saw Carl come up in the message box when I displayed it. That would be from here. I accessed this field over here. And do note that the names of the column, player ID, player username, such and so forth, because I have gone ahead and referenced them. Not really referenced them, but I have them written out and stored as variables. Where am I? At the top over here, okay? And over here, record variables, mainly public implementations. Okay, that's fine. So what we're going to do, the way I approach this, I have a list of string. You don't really need to go to this level of complexity for your own implementation, but this is just so in case I want to store all, because I have 5 different columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I made 5 empty slots in the list. Once initialize program is called from via the interface, and then let me quickly see what the call order is. So initialize program, get connection strings. This is quite important. So what you want to do is you need to get your connection string. Now I hope I can access it. Let's see if I can show you guys. So let me just check this. I'm not sure if it's this app config. Okay, so I'll use this opportunity to kind of jump around a little bit. What do I mean? Let's say, for example, you want to make a data access layer or Windows form application. You're going to need to do that in order to get your connection string, and I'm going to kind of show you how. This is the kind of approach I would do, okay? I know this is a little bit all over the place somewhat as a live demonstration, but it should all make sense, hopefully, towards the end as we kind of wrap things up together. Anyway, so I have here player game UI demo, which happens to be a Windows form project. Let's say, for example, you want to make a Windows form project, okay? So still have your empty project with your C# files here for the data access layer. Leave them there. Make your Windows form application project. Once that comes up, as you can see, mine was here, player game UI demo, go to the app.config file. You won't see a connection string off the bat, I think. But what you have to do is add a data source. So I'm just going to quickly look at my notes so I make sure I'm doing this correctly. And I'll show you how to do a data source, and that's the correct way to do it first. So create a WinForms application. Yeah, that's fine. So let's just say select. Typos everywhere. So what we're going to do is hit data source, which should be up here somewhere, I think. Or data sources, rather. Other windows. Here it is, data sources. And what you want to do, once you're there, so you maybe say your main form class or something, it doesn't really make a difference. Just when you're in data sources, the tab, which you can access via view, just click on this icon, add new data source. And then make sure you hit database. Make sure you hit data set. And what should come up in this drop menu is the updated database that you basically created earlier. I already have one here because it's in the same directory. In the sense of like the solution is within the same scope. You should be able to see it. Mine happens to be called player profiles. Oh yes. Data connection string. Okay, so just by looking at this, because I got a little bit confused just now, I think the connection string, which data connection should your application use to connect to the database? Player profiles connection string. Once you update, I think that's what makes the data string, the connection string visible. Do forgive me because I have kind of forgotten. It's even when you update the database or when you create the data source connection, because it's requesting the connection string now. I believe it's after you update, and because it's within scope, it should be visible here. So yours should come up here if I'm not mistaken. Do forgive me if I am wrong, and do feel free to correct me if I am in the chat or the comments. As this is a quick gloss through But anyway, once you do get that, once you do see the respective connection source, what you want to do is make sure you make your table visible and hit finish. Okay, I'm not gonna hit finish now because I've already done it. I don't want to do it twice, so I'm gonna hit cancel. And then what that should do is within your solution explorer, you should be able to see your data set over here. Okay, right there, over there. Okie dokie. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to hop to this is the user interface. So we're going to hop back to the data access layer. But what we should be able to see at this point, if we go to the app config, is our connection string, which is quite important. So what you want to do, what I did for the connection string, where it says tag add name, make sure you get this. It's like a huge string of jargon, which is kind of like a configuration setting kind of thing, but it should prefix or rather suffix with connection string at the end. Copy that. Remember, name equals and then your connection string over here. This is the one that you're going to want. Even though it says connection string here, we want the name first, okay, for this simplistic example. And if I go back to my data access layer, I go back to the class, that's what I passed over here, okay, the name. So that's quite important to note. How do you access that? As you can see by the syntax, in your functionality, somewhere in your implementation, you want to be returning configuration manager, which is under the system configuration namespace. Configuration manager, access the connection strings property, and then access via index, player game, or that's my one basically, but your own copied the name of the connection string, and it will look for the correct connection string via the index that you have provided, which happens to be a string, and you have to then access the connection string property after that. Okay. I went ahead and now return the connection string I stored as a variable. Now, step 2, what you want to do is also make sure you use usings when you open your SQL connection. So I've gone ahead and done using SQL connection. I'm instantiating this. And you need to pass the connection string, as you can see in the overload that it accepts as a connection string. So you can go ahead and use your stored connection string from earlier. Excuse me. Goodness, man. Ooh. Where was I? Sorry about that, guys. Where am I? Connection strings. I totally forgot. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, you're passing the connection string. I saw that as a global over here. And what you want to also do, open up another using block and construct this SQL data adapter class. Zoom in a little bit, it might be hard to read. I've gone ahead and done that. Now, this is the first bit of kind of like SQL syntax you're going to need to use in this particular context. And again, you can pause, or you can kind of, if you're already informed with SQL, this is like a no-brainer. But we're using a select statement. Select from player profile table. We're basically referencing the table that we want to access, as you can see here. And then in the overload, it also wants the SQL connection, which is what we've created up here, right? So you can pass that in the constructor of your SQL data adapter. And then follow the syntax in your case. I have data table, player table. So I have this data table class, which I've called player table. I've instantiated the data table. Go back to your adapter and call the field function and pass your player table into the overload. Now, in this case, because I want to target just one record, which is the field that says Carl, basically what I've gone ahead and done is that I have a data column, okay? And I have gone ahead and instantiated data column, and I've given it a capacity of 1. And in this, where am I? Yeah, and it's called key columns. That's the name of the variable. And in this structure or array, you can look at it as an array. In the first element, the first and only element, I've assigned it player table and I'm accessing the columns property. So now, when you think about it, I have access to the columns. In particular, the first column I indexed at 0 of my, you guessed it, player profile table. And then what I'm doing, I'm accessing the primary key of key columns, which is over here. Okay. So key columns, primary key columns. Now the funny thing is, I went ahead and just hard coded my primary key here, which is obviously not the best thing to do at all. You could just literally pass the primary key that you will access from here, key columns, and just place it here. On this line, when you do player profile table records, which are actually, I spelled that wrong. It's just my list. I spelled table wrong there, but it doesn't really matter. It's not important. And in the first slot of my list, I'm basically giving a string value, which is the value in that field. So it's looking at player table, looking at the rows, and it's finding via the primary key, which in this case happens to be 12, but you can just obviously dynamically allocate what the primary key is. And because the primary key is associated with a row, you can basically access the data in said row. I went ahead and casted it as a string via the toString method, and I'm storing it in, again, this list over here, which is a list of string. In the first element, I'm storing my record. Excuse me. And that's about it, really. It's quite simple as that. Once this all parses, and if you've written your syntax correctly, if you expose this line via debugging, you should be able to see your database entry. And again, I was kind of experimenting some other fun stuff you can do. As you can see, it's a little bit more complicated. I'm not going to go through any of this. And just to wrap things up, I'm going to quickly go through the user interface layer. We're going to check OBS. So we're hitting on 30 minutes. We've already just passed 30 minutes. I'm going to wrap this up soon. Where am I? So go back to your Windows form application. Quick note, because we have two projects in a solution, it's probably a good idea to just right-click your Windows form and to set it as the startup project, which you can see over here. Set as startup project. And so that just means once you run your solution, it will start with the Windows form application. Okay, we're going to go ahead and look at my form. Yeah, it seems I had an error earlier. I'm not too sure what happened there. So what I'm going to just do is close this. But I'm going to show you the syntax itself anyway. There's a quicker way I can do this. I'm not too sure what's going on with Visual Studio. Let's try one more time. I'm 100% sure what the error is about. Let's wait for that. Probably in the next 10 minutes I can wrap this up. Let's hope we can access the form. Excellent, so the form's here now. I just have a button here, get record. Went ahead and gave it an event. Button click, I'm going to click that again. All it does is message box show, and I went ahead also in my Windows form project, I went and made a class called controller. Yeah. What controller does, it has a function called get record data, and I'm just going to double check what I'm doing here. Oh, there's an important step I actually just glossed over. Sorry about that. So if you go to project, in order to view your namespace, which exists in this case, your data access, which exists in this namespace, the empty project namespace, you want to go ahead and go to project, add reference, instead of assemblies, we're going to go ahead and go to projects, and you're going to click the respective namespace for what you're doing. But I don't think it's done there actually. That doesn't make sense. I'm going to right click here. I'm going to right click on my Solution Explorer, my Windows Form application. There should be something that's like add reference. That's the proper way. Yeah, that's it. Sorry guys, I did it the wrong way initially. Projects, you should see your data access layer, in my case called crud_da. Go ahead and add your reference. And that just means you can add it as a namespace, as I've done here at the top. And probably not using this. I'm not using this here. The SQL thing. Yeah, what's that? Anyway, have a function, very simple stuff. Now that I have access to my iCrud interface, I can go ahead and do a little declaration of my interface, and then I can access the members of my interface. So if I go ahead and just access this, obviously the structure here is just proof of concept, demo-y kind of stuff. The interface setup and things isn't really optimal, but at least it gets the point across, right? Initialize program, as I've done here. So the general flow here is that you call this initialize program, then I call getSetConnection string, and then I shouldn't really be passing an empty string. It doesn't actually do anything, but it's just as I was coding there, I was kind of playing around with some of my options. But it all depends on the functionality of your stack as well, on your solution. Set SQL connection and then read, and then I basically return get record. And if I just go back to my data access layer, read is a function in the data access. What else am I using here? Get connection string as well, and initialize program. So I know there was a lot of stuff to kind of go through in the space of like 40 minutes and stuff. But again, this is just a really compact stream to kind of give you an idea. A very general primer. And once that's all done, if you've written all your syntax correctly, you have all your references set up, you should be able to access your database. I feel like something might go wrong if I try and run this. There was an error earlier, but I might be able to just demonstrate again. Check if there's any outstanding errors. Hopefully there won't be any errors. I can just show you guys smoothly, but you never know. And then I think we'll wrap things up from there. Hopefully this short walkthrough gave you guys a little bit of an insight into how you can approach this form of data access. Let me have a look at this. Let's go tick that off. We did the data sources. We followed the wizard. We've referenced our data access layer. And I went through the C# logic very briskly for you guys too. And we went through the flow. So once I hit this, hopefully we'll see the name Carl. Hopefully, I don't know. Is it gonna work? There it is. So there's Carl. And if you remember, that was an entry in the table. It was one of the fields Carl there under the player name column. So guys, that's gonna do it for this particular walkthrough. A very lightweight run through of how to access an SQL database using C#. Yeah, so obviously you can scale the idea from here, right? This is a very naive, simplistic example where the database resides within the same solution of your data access layer and your and your user interface front. But then you can kind of scale the idea. You can have, say, you can implement your interface via like a library, which you can plug in to your, say, data access. That will give you access, to your user interface rather. That will give you the data access to your database, which if you wanted to, you can still have it kind of somewhat coupled to the data access layer. It really depends on the configuration of your stack. But this all shows that it's possible. So, guys, I'm really glad that any of you who stuck around or just kind of came quickly to visit this stream. Thanks very much. I really do appreciate it. This is Williams. I'm Williams, of course. This is C-Sharp Walkthroughs. I'm Williams, and thank you guys. I'm so grateful to have you all here. And till next time, we'll be probably doing a little bit more of a continuation here. If not, we'll be going back to the video game series, actually. I'll be looking at the 2D video game series using C-Sharp, no editor, nothing like Unity, just a simple library called Win2D with the Universal Windows Pro platform for the front. So with that, I'm going to close the stream, and I bid you all a good evening if you're in the UK like myself. If you're in America, I think it might be evening time for you guys too. So good evening, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.